Who remembers fireside chats? Who remembers large-scale events where it was all overwhelming and people were in all kinds of rooms, but then you found this one space where people were having a fireside chat about a topic of interest, and you went there and it felt like some sort of respite from the rest of the chaos. And I feel with the loss of large-scale events, to some degree, we've lost the fireside chat. And I, for one, definitely think that is capturable in the podcasting medium. Bring back the fireside chat. Bring back the fireside chat in a podcasting medium. And that can be done by the way of podcast panels. If it's short term, just put together panels. But I would argue go for it for the long haul and put together masterminds and recurring sort of panels. And that's the way to capture the effect of the fireside chat. If you are a podcaster who has 25 episodes or more, there's all kinds of content plays that you can employ in order to get to the next level. And putting together this sort of alternative avatar of the fireside chat, really think about three things. One is when you do bring together people from different silos to talk to a topic, let's say sales, marketing, and customer experience. And if you're putting them together and you're, having them talk to customer pain points so that the customer doesn't have to listen to 3 separate podcasts on the subject, no matter how important the people who create them are, what you're doing is you're creating efficiency in their mind. So from your perspective, how are you able to show up and do something like this? When you group like this and when you put together panels, you will create accountability. It's really hard to get one host to do something unless they're deeply passionate about the subject. But when you put 2 to 3 people together, I can promise you that the efficiency levels will 2 to 3x as long as there's a fit. If there isn't, they're going to spend all their day fighting. So make sure there is a fit. But if not, you're going to create accountability for sure. Secondly, you're going to reduce the need for like a lot of a dip into someone's bandwidth. Creating a podcast in silos, whether it's for an organization on its own or a larger organization by subject matter expertise within it or verticals within it, it can prove difficult. So the way to bring it together and create more bandwidth and reduce the work is to break down those silos and bring together panels. And I think the third lesson is what happens with something like a panel or a cohort is like a refocus on values. And during the pandemic, a lot has been said about better together. And this is literally a demonstration of that kind of thing. People do get better. They get more amplified on a number of levels when you throw them together into a room and allow dialogue.
Welcome to the 4 a.m. Report. On this podcast, we dish about fresh-pressed, fun marketing. If you're stressed out and awake at night again, wondering what to do, you found your joy. I'm your host, Susan Diaz, podcasting founder, humor junkie, observer of human behavior patterns, and mom. Each week, we break down the latest headlines at the intersection of marketing and entertainment.
These are kind of the why we feel the panel, this cohort podcasting thing is the way that people should consider, or something people should consider.
Yeah, based on long qualitative conversations, right? So do you want to start with the first one?
The first one is accountability, right? Especially founders, entrepreneurs, most people in general. Your bandwidth, you're overstretched, right? So it's easy to say, I'm going to start this podcast, and then 3 weeks go by and you just haven't had time to do it, right?
Yeah.
Setting something up, knowing that you're accountable to 4 other women, because you all need to come together to record, produce, and get this out. It's just kind of it's a non-negotiable now.
Yeah.
You're committing to this, and you're committing to this group that you've formed.
100%. I think that accountability that comes from having to show up and do something with someone is big. When you're in a mastermind, in a cohort, you tend to get the things done purely because you don't want to be the person that shows up and says, I didn't get it done, right? So let's apply that same mindset to content creation. People are craving that accountability. It always seems hard when you go it alone. So that's the first thing.
The next Bandwidth.
The next thing, and you touched on it briefly over there, Will,
kind of tied together,
is the bandwidth of it. Like, so most often people get that, okay, the sound medium is sort of like the future. Like, it's been growing nonstop. If you take a look at the podcasting industry, it's exploded in many ways, so many acquisitions and growth. So it can only go up.
Don't you feel we've gotten to the point where it's almost like if you don't have a podcast or you don't have something representing your content in audio form, you're almost behind, you're starting behind, already?
I think
Especially right now, the way it's just exploded. It's almost expected if you're a brand, even personal brands. The podcast is an easy way to communicate.
100%. And I think that it's like a blog, right? Like at one point, every website had to have the word blog on there to count. And that's how, the SEO engines read your stuff and whatever. That said, right now, I think every single website, at least at a company level first, needs to have podcasts on it. So that's the future. There's where the opportunities are to be had. And why not leverage it? So when people recognize that as a point, the first resistance that you often hear is bandwidth. Like, I don't have the time to do this. And it like shudder, like, will I be able to do a podcast a week? It sounds like a lot of work. And it is.
And you think about it, it's the planning the episode, the recording, getting it edited. You or someone on your team has to write the copy or, write the blog post, get it out there, distribute it. So it can seem like an overwhelming task.
It can. So, what you want to think about then is when you do something like this, in which you are doing it with 3 or 4 other people and potentially outsourcing it as well, though it's totally possible to do it yourself if you want it. If you're doing it in that way, you're cutting your bandwidth, because what you're doing is this is syndicated content. This is similar material that's going to go out through 4 or 5 feeds. They're going to be cross-linked, and all of that really matters. It's going to give you good Google juju, right? Like, that's basically how you take content and sort of like explode it into a lot more places. So thinking about bandwidth, like, how can you do the same amount of work for an incremental amount of output is really, I think, what you can achieve by being part of panels.
Right, exactly, for sure.
And then the last finding, I think this is we've been talking about values a lot in a few of our podcasts, but it's about that value of being better together. Like, we are better together. That came out of the pandemic. It became articulated. It became a hashtag. So many people used it to tell their stories, and that continues. I think it's a really great value to take out of the pandemic. We are really truly better together. I've always talked about wingman. Like, no matter what I do, I need a wing person. Like, I'm just a deeply introverted human, and I do better when I have someone to feed off of. So I think that being better together as you create content, the amplification, the ability to cut on the bandwidth. There's a lot of like it's a cause that you can all sort of like dedicate yourselves to. So that right there is really the key reasons why we think this is a good idea, considering podcasting in panels. The first is you get to create with a level of accountability and structure. The second is that some of the bandwidth problem of creating solo can go away. And the final is centering to that value of we are better together and taking that out of pandemic into your content production.
Which is a nice way to end this conversation and this episode of the 4 a.m. Report.
Thank you for listening to the 4 a.m. Report. If you like what you're hearing, we'd love if you left us a 5-star review.